Here I am at the Language Institute, ready for my first day in the Department of Context. Now, where do I go for the orientation? Oh, this looks like the place. Let's check it out.
Welcome to the Department of Context, where we explore how stories are shaped by the times in which they're created, and how the world around us shapes the stories we tell today. Over centuries, cultures, religions, and technologies have influenced who tells stories, what and how stories are told, and why they matter. Your mission is to explore how context and culture shaped early English literature and begin thinking about how today's issues influence the stories we tell now.
Okay, sounds exciting and important. Grab your materials and let's get started.
Our story begins in Roman Britain from 43 to 410 CE. Before the Romans arrived, the island was home to Celtic tribes with their own pagan religions, oral myths, and localized traditions. When the Romans conquered Britain, they brought Latin language, built roads, and created centralized governance, spreading ideas and laying the groundwork for communication and storytelling. Instead of replacing local traditions, Roman culture blended with Celtic beliefs, creating a unique mix of rituals, myths, and values.
Pause. Okay, so when the Romans brought the Latin language to Britain, it mixed with the Celtic languages and traditions already in place. How do you think this blending of languages and cultures might have affected how people communicated and shared stories? Pause the video to jot down some notes. At first, communication between the Romans and the Celts might have been tricky, but over time, they likely borrowed words and ideas from each other. The Romans introduced written language, which made recording stories easier, while the Celts influenced storytelling through their oral traditions. Even today, when languages mix, it creates new ways to share ideas. Let's keep going.
When the Romans left England in 410 CE, Britain returned to tribal governance and became vulnerable to invasions, a turning point for its cultural future. The Anglo-Saxon migration followed, as Germanic tribes like the Anglo-Saxons and Jutes established kingdoms in Britain. They brought their languages, which evolved into Old English, and oral storytelling traditions. These societies valued bravery, loyalty, and honor, qualities celebrated in epic tales like Beowulf, which taught lessons about survival and community.
Let's think about this. The Anglo-Saxons lived in a time when survival depended on sticking together and being brave in the face of danger. What kinds of stories do you think might have been most important in a world like this? Pause the video to jot down 2 or 3 ideas. In a world where survival was everything, their stories likely focused on loyalty and bravery. They would have told tales of heroes who overcame great challenges through strength and courage, and who stood by their leaders in communities even in the face of danger. These stories weren't just for entertainment. They were a way to teach important values and prepare people for the real threats they faced, like invasions or harsh environments. They showed what it meant to be a protector, a leader, or a member of a strong, united tribe.
Anglo-Saxon tales were rooted in their pagan beliefs, with gods, monsters, and fate playing central roles. These stories reflected a worldview shaped by constant challenges and the need for resilience. But as Christianity began to spread, it brought a new perspective to storytelling, one that would reshape these tales and the values they conveyed. The next major shift came in 597 CE, when St. Augustine began converting Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to Christianity. This wasn't just a religious change, it transformed storytelling. Monks began recording oral tales, blending Christian morals with pagan traditions. For example, the epic tale Beowulf became a story of heroism, influenced by both pagan bravery and Christian faith.
So, when monks added Christian ideas to older stories, they were doing more than just changing the tales. They were shaping how people thought about things like courage, struggles, and what it means to be a hero. Now, think about today. How do you think the beliefs, values, or technologies of our time influence the stories we tell? Pause the video to jot down some ideas. Hmm, just like the monks blended Christian and pagan ideas, today's stories often mix old and new influences. Modern values like teamwork or diversity, and even tools like social media, can shape how we tell stories about heroes. I wonder what shifts next. Let's find out.
Monasteries became centers of literacy and learning. Most writing was done in Latin, the language of the Church, while Old English was used for spoken language and storytelling. After the Norman conquest in 1066, Old English blended with French, evolving into Middle English, a language that reflected both the old and the new. Let's move on to someone who used this new language to change the game completely. Geoffrey Chaucer. For centuries, Latin dominated written works as the language of the church, government, and scholars, accessible only to a small elite group. But in the 14th century, Geoffrey Chaucer changed the game. Chaucer wrote the Canterbury Tales in Middle English, the language people actually spoke, making stories accessible to a broader audience. This shift wasn't just about language. It gave storytelling a broader purpose. Chaucer's work reflected the experiences, struggles, and flaws of everyday people, challenging authority and sparking conversation.
Now that's intriguing. When storytelling moves from being written for the elite to being written for everyone, it changes what kinds of stories are told and whose voices are heard. What impact do you think writing for everyday people might have had on the stories that are told and how they're received? Pause the video and jot down some ideas. When Chaucer wrote for the people, it opened the door for more honest, even uncomfortable stories. Instead of just praising the powerful, storytelling could explore what people struggled with, what made them laugh, or even what made them angry. This shift didn't just change stories, it changed what storytelling could do, showcasing how Chaucer's work influenced the future of literature.
Chaucer's choice to write in Middle English paved the way for future writers, showing that literature could reflect everyday voices. By critiquing society and amplifying the common person's voice, Chaucer demonstrated how storytelling could challenge norms and inspire change. Now it's time to begin your work in the Department of Context, exploring how stories shape the world and how you can too. And with that, you've completed your orientation.
We did it! Thanks for joining me. I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for what's ahead in the Department of Context. We're diving into the beginnings of English literature with epic tales like Beowulf and Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. I'll see you for our next lesson. Remember, every story, including yours, has the power to shape the future.
Hey!